about reviving your business post COVID-19, and we thought today we'll focus particularly on something like cash flow, because that is one of the aspects, as boring as it might be, or as I suppose something we don't want to talk about. It's unfortunately one of those things that tends to glare us right in the face, and we tend to ignore it the most. So we thought today, let's talk about cash flow and look at the things around cash flow that we as business owners can try and look to, or look at, to sort of move our business forward and where we go from here. So just quickly a reminder of what we're doing. The purpose today, it's not about sort of giving huge amounts of content or huge amounts of information. It's more a way of connecting and sharing some relevant news and business critical information. So the idea is to connect, the idea is to have a chat, and the idea is to sort of give you some food for thought once we are in it and once we are out of it as well, and what the new normal might look like. Because unfortunately, I think nobody actually knows. So sometimes we have to revert back to some fundamental thinking and then try and adapt that for what our businesses or our environment is giving us. A reminder that we have all our topics and all relevant information with regards to the COVID-19 crisis and some templates of UIF and those sort of things, all shared in the shared folder. The link is at the bottom of the display here. So anybody who wants access to that or needs to have a look at something, let us know. And you can either have access to it immediately, or we can share you the link and tell you where something is. Just quickly, we've brought this slide back in again because we want to remind business owners that, yes, some of us may have been working already. Some of us might have not been working. Our business may have been in a coma during the coronavirus or stalled. But we have to go through a process now of re-looking at where we are, understanding what our business looks like right now, and even identifying areas that we need to focus on. So it might not be as clear-cut for most of us, but if we can identify a few key critical areas like marketing, how do we market now? How do we move through marketing? If we can focus on critical areas to get through, the chances are we'll be far more ready for when our business kicks off, when our business starts. So once we have those clear areas focused on, we can then start implementing clear actions of how to improve it. And for us as OptiGrowth, one of the clear areas right now is looking at your cash flow. We need to understand, do we have that cushion, or do we have that bit of capital to kickstart our business and get our business off the ground again? And if we don't, how do we go about finding that cash flow? Now, we've had Travis from Funder on talking about investors, talking about bridge financing, talking about loans. So there is a video already on that. So we're not going to talk about that today. But again, we need to understand where we are sitting right now so we can make critical decisions about where to next for us and set those action items going forward. The next thing to do is we have to think, once we've done our benchmark, we have to re-look at, are we on track with that? So do we have the correct plans in place, and are we delivering to those plans that we had previously? And this could be done probably monthly, I would say now, because I think the environment we're in will be constantly changing. So I know, at OptiGrowth, we are constantly looking at our financials, constantly looking at what we can do next, constantly looking at if our business ideas and our strategies are working, and we are trying to adapt those as we need to. So I think flexibility in how we do it and then reassessing how it's working is critical as well. I think lastly, just a note on benchmarking. Benchmarking is very difficult, or it tends to be something that we don't want to do because either the information is too hard hitting, or we think that we are going to be too critical, or we're sometimes undercritical of ourselves. But the one thing to take away from a benchmark is no business can ever be fully mature. No business can have every aspect of their business clearly defined, clearly elaborated on, clearly optimized and reviewed, because we are constantly changing. The only constant in business is change, and therefore with that change, things tend to fall out of sync or fall out of maturity as well. So if you feel like your business isn't fully mature, there's nothing wrong with that. All businesses go through it. It's all about putting the action in place and moving forward. All right, we mentioned this right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think worldwide and economists worldwide tend to agree that this is a pivotal moment for most businesses. There's a huge paradigm shift happening within business right now. Just think about how we are working through webinars. How many businesses have considered cutting their rentals or cutting their leases because they can start working remotely, because this has proven that a remote working environment is possible. I heard a story the other day that somebody like APSA apparently has cut half of their their leases, and has saved something like 4 billion Rand per month on just those lease cuts, because they've decided to go for a far more remote working sort of model, and have some time coming to the office for meetings, or for team chats. So already just by looking at that, we've moved completely away from the dated, I suppose, way of being in an office, working 8 to 5, and trying to keep our business as normal as possible. So we have to consider the fact that there is a pivotal moment right now that we have to adapt to. And I think most of our businesses are already feeling that. So how do we go about that? How do we move forward? Like I said, today's discussion is all about cash flow. So how do we get our businesses from being in that a comatose state and starting to revive itself? Now, as many of you can probably assume or expect this, once you come out of a coma, you can't just get up and start walking. You can't just get up and start running. You've got to slowly but surely get your body to remember things or to become aligned to what's happening with your body. You may have had some muscle depletion. You may have had a few other things that's gone wrong. So we have to start waking ourselves up and waking our businesses up to what the new normal would be. And understanding where your cash flow sits in that is a vital part of it. So we thought today we'll focus on cash flow, but also bring in some other elements around cash flow, which might just help spur on some ideas of where you can look. So just quickly, with regards to where to next, I think the first thing is we have to be objective. Like I mentioned with the benchmarking, we have to understand where we are. If we understand where we are, we can start planning and preparing for what comes next. And that's about 90% of the work, I think, when you start looking at your business moving forward. You have to plan, you have to prepare, and the 10% is kickstarting your business again. The 10% of opening your doors and getting work in is probably the easier part of it. But knowing what to do, knowing where to go, and knowing where to look will be the hardest part of your business, of your planning going forward. So think about, before you start opening or operating, what can you do now to prepare for that end goal, prepare for that open door status. Even if you are slightly open or partially working, it's still a good thing to consider what happens when level 3 comes along now. We're talking level 3 at the 1st of June. We don't know when level 2 will come along, but what does that mean for your business, and how will you start interacting with your clients again when level 3 gets operational? So that planning, that preparation is a key part to making sure you can move your business forward as well. So onto cash flow. I think anyone who's been part of our group mastermind programs would have heard this phrase a lot. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow or cash is reality. The biggest part here is that we tend to get fixated on the fact that we're making money. And we lose sight of the fact that sometimes making money might not be the best thing for the business, because the business might be losing money by making money. And that means that your business model doesn't fit your business worth or your business results. So underpricing yourself, having huge operational costs, could result in your profitability and your profit margins not being fit for your business environment, which obviously means you lose cash, and obviously means that cash does not come into your bank accounts. And even if you are profitable, the big shortcoming of a lot of small businesses is the fact they don't get cash in fast enough. And without cash, you can't pay suppliers, you can't grow your business, and you can't start scaling. So we have to consider those 3 aspects when looking at cash particularly. Do I have a revenue model that works for my clients? And is that revenue model profitable? Am I able to take my operational costs and my operational structures to make sure that whatever I get in financially is going to give me some form of profits? Because if it doesn't, why am I doing it, right? And the last point is, once I'm making profit and once I have cash coming in, am I able to hold that cash and get that cash in fast enough? Because if I'm not, chances are I'm missing the plot somewhere as well. All right. So just quickly, when it comes to things like your cash flow, there are unfortunately a lot of factors around that make it work. So just a reminder of what a business model canvas looks like and what the business model canvas means. A business model canvas effectively is your building blocks of the fundamental portions of your business. So looking at things like, who is your customer? How do I build relationships with my customer? How do I provide a channel of communication or a channel of delivery to get my product or my value proposition to that customer? The bottom part here of revenue, that all talks about, what does that pricing model look like? How do I offer my customers a way of paying for my services or making that the revenue more predictable? One thing that all businesses should strive for is having a predictable income stream. So either through retainer clients or through subscriptions or through something of that event to make that income a lot more predictable. And therefore, if your business model is profitable, having cash in the bank as well. The back part of this business model canvas looks at things like, what am I doing to build my value proposition? What are the activities I'm doing to make sure my product or my service goes out correctly? Which resources do I use to deliver that product and services? And do I have partners in my business who can help contribute towards that? And obviously underlying all of those areas, we're looking at things like, what is the cost there? So if your cost models and your revenue models don't match up to being profitable, the chances are the cash in your bank is going to be very limited. All right. Again, guys, a reminder, if there are questions or if you want to make comments, I'm happy for you to jump in and ask me questions. Otherwise, you can post it in the chat and we'll answer it either during or post the discussion. All right. Moving forward, just quickly thought I'd play a video about what cash flow is, so understanding a little bit better. So I hope this makes noise. Everyone hear the sound?
Perfect, Damion.
No matter how expertly you manage your budget, you can confidently project a surplus at the end of the year and still not have enough cash at some point during your fiscal year. That's because money doesn't always come in and go out smoothly from day to day or month to month. In order to weather the ups and downs properly, or more importantly, so you don't end up in hot water, it's important to project and plan your cash flow. Let's explore that, shall we? First, it's important to understand the difference between your cash flow and your budget. Know that they are both critical to understanding your overall financial picture. Your budget is a plan for how you will earn money and spend money. Your cash flow is a record of when money comes into and goes out of your organization. In order to have cash when you need it, you'll need to create a cash flow projection system that works for you. Planning a cash flow is different from budgeting in a few key ways. Cash flow does not relate to calendar or fiscal years. And just because you have a cash shortfall at some point during the year doesn't necessarily mean your budget is in trouble. Your cash flow projection does not include non-cash income and expenses such as in-kind contributions or depreciation. Most importantly, cash flow does include all the money that comes in and out, including transfers, loan payments, and sales of investments. Cash flow planning begins with a realistic budget. It's important to understand what types of income you have, when income will come in, and when expenses will be paid. And you'll need to make accurate assumptions about your cash flow over the course of the year. Plan for things such as seasonal needs, payroll, benefit plan payments, discretionary repairs, capital purchases, or for the timing of when grants or contracts will be received. Then be prepared for cash shortfalls, those times of the month or year when cash isn't coming in, but the bills are. And monitor and respond to cash shortfalls in a timely manner. If you find yourself with a cash shortfall on the horizon, here are a few tips. Consider if you have the ability to bring money into your organization faster. One way to do this is to build relationships with foundation program officers, major donors, and contract managers, and ask if payments can be made earlier in the year. You might also consider changing the time of your annual campaign or special events, and review invoicing and collections practices to see if you can bring in money faster. Another tip is to send out money slower. To do this, consider the timing of payroll and benefit plan payments ahead of time. Discuss payment options with service providers and negotiate installment payments or request longer payment terms. Plan the timing of discretionary repairs or capital purchases for the year. And find other sources of cash, such as a line of credit, or use your reserves as an internal line of credit. By planning, preparing, responding, and understanding cash flow, you can ensure the financial health for your organization 365 days a year.
Right. I just want to make a quick point about understanding the difference between something like OpEx and CapEx. So OpEx talks about operational expenses and CapEx talks about capital expenses, right? And where you see those figures on your financials is a bit of a difficulty if you're not very financially inclined, right? So generally those two terms will be used by corporates, and that's generally talking to the budget they have available for buying equipment or buying assets versus the budget they have available for their general normal expenses. Now, one thing about CapEx expenses is when you're buying something like a PC or a laptop, for example, you probably won't be seeing that on your profit and loss statements, which means that as your profit margins increase, there may still be a cash removal or a decline in your cash flow, because that transaction of buying a new PC or a new laptop will be seen as an asset which will go into your balance sheets. So when we start planning for our cash flow forecasting, it's not good enough to just look at your profit and loss statement to understand is there cash in the bank. It's also looking at the actual cash balance in your bank account to make sure that you have the money available to spend money on things like equipment or assets as well. And if we don't think like that, the chances are we may be caught out buying things or doing things with our money that might not be best for our business right now. So as an example, a lot of corporates are currently investing and buying a lot of remote PC, or I suppose remote assets, to help their staff work remotely. Now, all of those expenses that they're putting in will not be seen as operational expenses, but rather be seen as capex expenses. So if you can go into the same thing where you are looking at maybe buying some equipment for your reopening or for your new business model going forward, you may just want to consider looking at what your budget is with regards to money coming in or revenue coming in, and your total expenses of overheads, and then looking at what cash is remaining, because that may also swing your decision of what to purchase as you decide to open up. So just quickly, some problems or some simple things to look at with regards to symptoms of a lack of cash flow. So sometimes when you look at a mismanagement of resources, the timing of resources, we talk about, are we buying supplies or resources to sell later, and are we making sure that purchase of resources is done at firstly the right amount, but also at the right time before we sell. The problem with mismanaging that is that if I buy resources too early and sell it too late, I've got a money sitting in my inventory that I can't get rid of right now. So it means that I don't have cash available to do other things because the money's tied up in my inventory. And if that inventory doesn't get sold quickly, that cash sits and it potentially loses value. So it becomes a potential opportunity cost, because that money could have been used elsewhere. Another problem with regards to cash is if we're on a growth stage, or we're investing stage in our business, or a scaling stage of our business, that growth of investing in growth could also lead to a decrease in our cash stash. And we have to think, is growth needed right now, or is it a case of knuckling down and not investing in our growth to make sure we can get through these tough times? I think one key point that we've been discussing with a lot of our clients going forward is, are you collecting what's owed to you? So are you looking at your debtors age analysis and making sure that those clients who owe you money are paying for what they owe you? Now, during the coronavirus pandemic and during this time, everyone's holding on to cash as hard as they can, as long as they can. It doesn't mean you can't ask for it. And what we've picked up is a lot of our clients are not communicating or not getting back to them with regards to what is owed to them. So we, as the business owners, or as a supplier to those clients, have to start asking the tough questions of, are you able to pay us? Can you give us some partial payment of what you owe us, or can we make a plan to get that repayment in? Because effectively your money is sitting in their bank accounts, or it's being used. And we need to understand from our clients, what can we do to get the money into our account so we can make sure we have it as well. The last problem, again, is like we mentioned with regards to the revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality, is that if our business is unprofitable, the chances are there won't be enough cash to operate. So we have to make sure that we review our pricing models and we make sure we cut our costs as much as possible during this time. Now, a big cost for most businesses pre-coronavirus would have been your salaries and wages figure in your expense statements. The coronavirus has given us opportunity to relook at that. Can our business afford to work with less staff? Can we minimize the impact of our salaries and wages bill to make sure we can get as much revenue in and make our staff as profitable as possible to keep the business alive? Now, yes, that may sound a little bit harsh on staff members, but we have to be realistic. Can the business survive without having to cut staff? And if the business can't survive, we have to make those cuts to make sure the business can survive, because when the business grows again, we'll be able to reappoint or to create more jobs. So making sure our business is profitable is a huge part of making sure your cash flow cycle can remain positive and can remain, I suppose, as high as possible as well. All right. We thought adding something about break even would be important here, because I think even with most businesses opening up now, the chances are we'll probably be in a loss situation if we have capital to maintain that loss, or at the very least, we'll be looking to target a break even scenario. And break even tends to be misconstrued between most business owners, because either we don't understand what breaking even means. So we thought we'd add a little video just to give you a quick overview of what break even actually means.
When it comes to starting a business, achieving liftoff can be exhilarating. However, it's also when the journey can be the most perilous. Immediately after launch, the business is working just to stay afloat until the point you know you're in the clear. But what does that mean, and how will you know? It's called break even, and put simply, It's the point at which a business is neither making a profit nor a loss. Rather, it's momentarily floating in limbo. The break-even point is the total amount of sales a business needs to achieve before it starts being profitable. Or, more technically, a business's fixed cost of production, like rent, divided by how much you sell the product for, minus the variable costs per unit sold, like ingredients or materials. How much you sell the product, minus variable costs, is usually called your contribution margin. Confused? Don't worry, here's an example. Let's say it costs Pizza Planet $8 to make one pizza, and they sell the pizza for $12. That means their contribution margin is $4. So, if Pizza Planet's only fixed cost is $500 rent, to find out the number of pizzas they need to sell to break even, they simply divide the rent by the contribution margin. This means they need to sell 125 pizzas, and any pizza sold after that would contribute to the company's net profit. So, you can see by conducting a break-even analysis, a business is able to determine the price of a product, how many need to be sold, as well as identify and potentially reduce excessive fixed costs, ultimately allowing a business to reach profitability and beyond.
All right, so I hope that clears up a little bit. So
When it comes to
effectively, when we're looking at break even, we are trying to make sure we make just enough money to cover our costs. And that's zero balance, or that's zero profit at the end of it. It means that we are operating on that very fine line of making a profit or making a loss. And that means at least we are covering all our costs as well. And once we have that identified, we can then set a bare minimum target of what our business should be achieving post or waking up from the coronavirus pandemic. If we don't know that, the chances are we are probably acting more blind than we are, I suppose, educated in what we are looking to achieve. If we then find that our break-even point doesn't quite work out, or we are not hitting those targets, we'll have to then relook at making cuts and cutting costs to make sure we can then either afford operating, or we'll have to look at upping our pricing, which then means that we have to obviously look at our customers again and ask, are they able to afford that pricing? So the question will always be, at what point does break-even become profitable, or at what point does break-even become possible, versus at what point does break-even not become possible, and how do I start looking at changing those break-even points? So quickly, when we're looking at something like cash flow, we have to consider what our financials say. So anybody, like I mentioned earlier, is not really financially inclined, might not know the difference between what accounting is firstly. So when we look at accounting, we're looking at what do we have as record keeping in our business? What mechanisms do we have in place to keep accurate and controlled records of what we've done in the past? Now, why it's important is we want to know, firstly, was our business working in the past? What was working well in our business in the past, and were we actually making the profit we were needing? Secondly, did we have cash available to also look at growth, or potentially even have reserves for this time at the moment? When we have that in place, and when we can look at the past and look at trends, we can start planning for the future, which then starts looking at financial management. And financial management looks at forecasting and focusing on what happens next. So any one of our clients who we've dealt with, or any business we've been dealing with, a big focus right now is to make sure that we are doing forecasting and understanding where our business will be going, so we can start putting a budget in place. Now, as with benchmarking, if we don't have a budget in place, we don't know what our targets are going forward. So again, drawing out a financial plan, trying to forecast and predict, which we all know is very difficult, but forecast and predict what revenue will be coming in and how that revenue might change my business structure. And then on top of that, the expenses of making that revenue work in my company is vitally important. Now, once you've done that, you can start forecasting a potential cash flow forecast. And again, we understand it is very, very difficult to do, but even if you start and get it wrong, at least you are 10 years ahead of most businesses. And when you have that, you can at least forecast to understand what my bank balance be at the end of this month, at the end of next month. Where will I sit financially, or as a target coming towards the end of June? And if all goes well, will I achieve that target or do better? Because if I don't, what's the next step? What's the next plan? And that's one way of keeping yourself accountable for where your business is going to. All right. We as OptiGrowth have designed quite a basic, but I think intuitive way of forecasting your cash flow. And we call it a liquidity report. So we take things like your opening bank balances and potentially even money available to you, and we start allocating a bank balance as it currently stands at the date of the report. But then we also start looking at what debit orders or costs or key items are coming in and out of your bank accounts. And effectively, all you've got to then do is put down those balances as you see them coming into your business. Now, yes, it might not be a guaranteed statement or guaranteed status, but the fact is, as you start thinking through, you'll start seeing your bank balance and your cash available figures start moving around a bit. And what happens then is you can start seeing at what point does my bank balance either go past my overdraft or become less of my overdraft. At what point do I need to put more money into the company? At what point will I start struggling to afford the business? And as soon as you can identify that as a business, the chances are you can start preparing for it. So if you know that by mid-June, you may have a bit of a cash crunch situation, you can start planning on phoning suppliers or talking to suppliers about how to repay or how to move forward if you don't have the cash available. So as an example, most suppliers now will more than likely be looking on a cash on delivery model. But if you are a good customer of theirs, you can start negotiating a repayment term with them. So either a invoice and pay in 15 days, payment plan in 30 days, just to help your business get through some of those difficult times. And like I mentioned, we had a discussion around financing and the acquisition of financing. And if you do get to a point where you see that your bank balance starts decreasing past your overdraft limits, you can then even consider looking at what point do I need to look at bridging financing. Can I go to somebody who is a facility where I can get some money from? And can I prove to them that if I can get a loan, at least I can repay that loan? Because all I need is a cushion to get through that 15th of the month or that 20th of the month or whatever it may be. So doing a forecast like this or doing a report like this at least gives me some clarity where to look and what to look for. Because if I don't do that, the chances are I don't know. And again, anything we do right now as a business owner, we want to try and be as certain as possible that what I'm going to be doing is the best result for me. We might not always get it right, but at least we can start seeing what the outcome could be and working towards an outcome. All right. So just quickly, signs that you have poor cash flow. If you need to borrow money consistently. So if you get to a point where you're using other people's money throughout the month, the chances are you've got a very bad or deteriorating cash flow model. And that could be for many reasons. Again, it might not necessarily be because your business isn't working. It could be because you aren't getting money in from your clients. But if you need to borrow money to keep your accounts topped up, the chances are there is something looking a little bit dire within your business model and something you need to maybe relook at how you start positioning yourself or how you start cutting costs to get that cash flow balance back up again. The next phase is looking at your profit margins. So are you selling correctly? So is your pricing correct within your industry or within your market? And secondly, are you producing it at the right cost to yourself? Because if those two don't match, the chances are you're not going to make enough profits on your sales. Now, one way to look at that is there's two key profit areas you want to look at. It's either going to be your gross profit margin, and that's your sales minus your direct costs. So the things I need to produce my product, my services, and that'll give you a gross profit margin. And from the gross profit margin, you'll then have your fixed costs like your rent, electricity, fuel, whatever else may be, which then gives you a net profit. So it's two areas to look at. Am I producing my goods at the right cost to get a gross profit margin that I can then cover my expenses with? If that's the case, am I then cutting my expenses enough to make sure I can have a net profit at the end? And remember, if we're looking at going out of this coronavirus pandemic, we are hoping for a break even right now. Anything that's a break even and more means that at least my business is surviving, my business is in a decent space at least. So if I can cut my expenses or my fixed costs, the chances are I can start moving towards a more profitable net profit status as well. Are your customers making late payments? Again, it goes and talks to how quickly can I get the money in. So once I deliver a service, am I able to get money in fast, or am I waiting for my money to come in? And again, understanding that about your business will also help you make decisions about, do I need to go out and get bridging finance? Do I need to go out and ask somebody to help me get through the first month, 2 or 3 of my business to make sure I can afford the business firstly and make sure when my customer payments come in, I can then afford to repay those loans. The last one is, are your key suppliers getting nervous? Are they asking questions about affordability? Are they converting you from a customer with payment terms of 30 days or 15 days, whatever it may be, to a cash on delivery customer? And if that's the case, it means that they are also getting nervous that you can't afford them. So having open conversations and talking to your suppliers about what your business is going through and coming to an agreement of how to pay could also help you just bolster your cash flow a little bit. And the last one is, if you've got a business advisor, is your business advisor's face going green? Because if your business advisor can't see the signs that you are overtrading or that you're not managing your cash flow correctly, the chances are there is something really wrong. So look at your advisor. If you have an advisor, ask questions and see if there aren't ways you can strategically pull yourself away from the situation and look at your business objectively to try and get out of that. All right. Trying to improve your cash flow again, I suppose, comes down to the discussion we had now about.
Sorry, Damion, can I interrupt you quick?
Go for it.
Sorry, man, what do you mean there with a business advisor face turning green? Can you clarify that a little bit more for me?
With your advisor turning green, if your business advisor thinks that your business is struggling and starts getting ill from the thought that you might not be able to have a business afterwards, a bit of a sort of joke you can call that. But it's just a way of saying, if your advisor starting to sigh a lot, starting to make comments like you are in trouble, it's time to maybe start listening.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. Probably a bit of a lame joke. All right. So just quickly looking at improving your cash flow. One of the big things is am I pricing correctly? So am I either pricing too low? So are my direct costs of delivering the services and goods too expensive or too high? Are you covering your overheads? And how are your competitors doing? Now, the problem we're going to probably face going into the post-coronavirus pandemic is that there will be a lot of people trying to get business and getting business desperately, which means they more than likely will start looking at dropping their prices to impact the market, to penetrate the markets. That also then means if your pricing is too low and your profit margins aren't good enough, the only option you have from there is to sell a lot of it or a lot of something. And again, it goes down to your capacity or your availability of being able to sell more. Now, business coaches or consultants advisors like King, Barbara and I, we potentially or more than likely sell hours of the day, and we can't grow our capacity very fast. We can't scale very quickly because we need hands and feet to help us do that. However, if you're a product producer, does your value chain behind you, does your delivery system behind you allow you to produce more? And if that's the case, a pricing strategy of going low could be a good call. But again, the question is, will you be able to make enough sales to make your business firstly break even, or secondly make it profitable? And the third part is, do you know what those profitability targets are? So do you know what your costs or your profit margin will be? Do you understand the difference between your GP and your net profit percentages? And if you don't, now's the time to start looking at understanding it better. So understanding profitability is a huge part about your pricing models and understanding how you price your products as well. And just quickly, when it comes to pricing strategies, there are generally 3 strategies we can look at, and it's a bit of a tough game because if you get the strategy wrong, you may be perceived very different in your market of what you're doing. So the first one is penetration pricing. Is there a way that I can charge low pricing to get into the markets, right? And like I mentioned, when we do that sort of strategy, you're looking for a really high volume of sales to come through. So if I'm going to go low my pricing, I need to make sure I've got the highest possible volume of sales to make it worth my while. If you've got lots of competition, then it means that more than likely you could drive your pricing down within your market, and then coming up in pricing or increasing your pricing becomes even more difficult. So when you play a penetration strategy, you want to try and make sure you understand, what does the market normally pay for it? Is this a periodic thing? And if I do go this route, am I able to up my pricing to get to a point where my profit margins are back to where they should be, right? You're also looking at potentially a long-term profit stake in a high market share. So generally, people who go, or companies who go for penetration pricing, are companies who have a very high market share because they can almost guarantee the volumes to come in. The other issue with regards to penetration pricing is that if I'm the smallest fish in the pond, the chances are the bigger companies and the bigger fish can last longer on charging less than I can because they've got reserves in place to do that. So we have to make sure that we understand, why am I penetrating the market through a pricing strategy? And secondly, am I able to maintain that and then increase on pricing when that market share becomes a little bit better? The next one is looking at market pricing. So here we look at, what is the market willing to pay? What are my customers willing to pay at the moment, and what are my competitors doing? And then trying to balance that act of being either on point with them and then differentiating what you're doing to reinforce your customers to come back to you. So what have I done as part of a marketing strategy or communication strategy to make sure my clients are aware that I am still differentiated from what my competitors are? The last one is skimming. So here we look at charging a premium. So you bring down the volumes needed to make profits, and we charge a premium because we are either unique, we are different, we are niche, and we can offer a service or a product that our competitors can't get from very many other competitors. It's a risky strategy because if there is strong competition, the chances are your perception will change as someone who's either overcharging or charging too much for that value delivered. So generally skimming or higher pricing models work in industries where there are very few players, or where you are seen as one of the, I suppose, more elite or more sort of better products effectively. So if we look at someone as a bit of a case study, if you think of retailers, so where would someone like a ShopRite fit in, right? So ShopRite generally caters to a lower end of the market. They tend to have a bigger share of the market because they are charging a lower price for their goods and services than somebody like a Woolies would, or somebody like a Pick n Pay and Spar would. Whereas Spar and Pick n Pay tend to operate for the more sort of midline markets and the market related, or the sort of, I suppose, the more middle income markets, and therefore they look at how to differentiate their products between each other. So they generally price the same, but they do things differently to attract clients to come to them rather than one or the other. And then if we look at a skimming model, someone like Woolies tends to do more premium products, luxury packaging, and therefore they stand out from the rest of the market of retailers and charge generally higher fees than what we normally see at someone like ShopRite. So again, just understanding where you fit in your market and what your clients are looking for could help you adjust your pricing strategy to make sure that you break even or make a profit going out of this. I thought I'd add this in just as a quick note of how you look at differentiating who you are. So there tends to be 3 different areas you can look at. The first one being, are you different? So can I show my clients if I'm differentiated from the other? So what do I do to show my clients to buy from me rather than buy someone else? And do I do things in a different way? I may sell similar products or similar services, but what makes me different to them? The next one is, am I a niche service provider? So am I somebody who operates in a really small market, and in that small market, there are very few people who can do what I do? So somebody like, I suppose, Uber Eats, you know, the food delivery, the food online delivery market's a very small one. So Mr. Delivery, I suppose Butler's Pizza is even smaller, but there are very few players in the market who can do what they do at the scale they do it. So they're playing in a very niche market and therefore generally offer a premium of fees to what they do as well. The last one is cost focus. So am I going to a market where I can reduce my cost and play in a market and play strongly in a market where cost is an aspect and where being the cheapest is the best? And like I mentioned, if we play in that market of cost, we have to make sure that we can either maintain that cost cutting focus for a longer term, or if we can't, we're going to be brought under by competitors and clients who are bigger and more capable of running at a loss for longer periods of time. The problem is if we don't put ourselves into one of these three areas, we tend to be in what we call no man's land. So that means that either nobody knows why we are different, nobody knows if we are niche, and nobody actually knows if we are looking at a cost model either. Now, to say that we are in no man's land doesn't necessarily mean we can't play in different areas at different times in our business life cycle. So we may decide that to get a quick bit of market share going into the post-coronavirus or phase or level 3 of the lockdown, we may decide to do a cost cutting or a price reduction strategy. But again, it may only be for a set period of time, and then we move back to our differentiated focus. So what makes us different again? So if we're playing in one of these 3, at least we know that we're doing something and not operating in an area where we don't know what's going on within our market or where people don't know what's going on with us. Because again, like we mentioned in I think a webinar right at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, we have to make sure that what we do from a marketing strategy is to keep ourselves front of mind, keep ourselves in a space where our customers know what we offer, and to make sure that we are the first person they think of, the first company they think of when they're looking at buying. All right. So just quickly, when we're looking at turnaround strategies, now this might not be a turnaround strategy for most of us, but when we're looking at bringing our companies back online or back into a space of operation, we have to make sure we look at our marketing, our business, and our operation plans. So what is the strategy of doing this? What are we going to do now that's going to make sure we can get out of the starting blocks and be there faster than our competitors? The next thing is to meet with your employees and your senior management. So if you haven't already started letting go of staff, or you haven't started making decisions about how you're going to operate post the pandemic, now is the time to do it. And informing your informing your employees and your management and your executive team is key to that. Because if there's any confusion or any lack of transparency within your ranks, the chances are that they won't know what's going on, and that'll cause probably a lot of infighting between you and your teams. And that's the last thing you need. You would want your teams to be as focused on where they're going, what they're doing, and what the targets are, because that way you're all working towards the same goal. Any uncertainty or any disjointedness between you and your teams won't result in a singular drive or singular focus in what you want to achieve. You also have to revise your plans. So once you've spoken to your employees, the chances are there may be some ideas around how to make things better. So as an example, if you have a really heavy production team, your employees maybe give you some advice or some thoughts into how they can make it more efficient, how they can relook at some process potentially, and how they can deliver better to make more out of their daily operations. And if that comes about, we have to consider relooking our plans again. As business owners, we are not the experts in everything in our business. We are not the know-it-all in our business. We have to consider the fact that we have appointed people and using people who are more skilled or more qualified to make decisions around certain areas of business. And therefore, when we have these meetings to discuss key elements with our key employees, management, or decision makers, we may want to consider revising our plans again. All right, so meet with your company employees and make sure they understand the goals. So make sure that they understand what's going to happen again and what those targets are. There's nothing wrong with giving your employees enough information to make sure they can see what the goal is. So what are your revenue targets? What are your targets for them individually of achieving it to make that revenue target successful? You don't have to give them the nuts and bolts and the critical details or the sensitive details, but the high level overview of what you want to achieve within your business could help your employees just to see your vision firstly, and also drive towards that vision with you. Meet with the customers. So this might not be as easy as it sounds, but again, communication, sending up emails, doing campaigns to advise your customers that you are restarting, or that you have started, or that you are busy working, is vitally important, because if they are loyal customers, they will happily start supporting you again. Now, at a time when customers more than likely don't have as much available capital or money to spend, the chances are that they are probably going to be a little bit more hesitant spending money. But again, it's up to you as the business to justify why spending it with you is so important compared to your competitors. Meet with your vendors and suppliers. I think this is one that a lot of business owners tend to shy away from a bit. We don't want to talk to suppliers because either we owe them money, or secondly, we don't want to talk to them because we don't know how they react to us. So talking to your landlords, talking to your key suppliers for key resources to produce your products and services is vitally important. You never know. If you don't shoot, you won't score. If you don't ask the question about payment terms, if you don't ask the question about repayments, if you don't ask the question for maybe a payment holiday, you will never know what the answer will be. And by asking, you may just get an answer you don't expect as well. So meet your suppliers, meet with your vendors, share your strategy and vision to make sure they can understand it. And even if they need to, show them what your outlook looks like. So you can give them confidence that whatever you're doing now, there will still be money coming in, or you'll still be able to repay them what's owed. Contact the tax authorities. So this is important to understand with things like your VAT, with your pay as you earn, all those critical areas of people you owe money to as well. The tax man is unfortunately one of those. And if you are having issues with regards to paying your VAT or coming to terms with paying taxes, how can we get around that? I know SARS is being very generous at the moment and allowing people to repay their VAT in certain periods or certain payment plans. So asking the question and making sure you don't get on the wrong side of SARS is vitally important as well to make sure your business survives. Keep only the employees that are essential to your business. I think this is the hardest one that we've picked up with a lot of our clients. Nobody wants to be the person who fires someone or lets them go. The problem is, and the benefit is as well on top of that, is that the coronavirus pandemic has given us a way of doing this quite quickly and quite effectively. Governments and the Labor Relations Acts and all those things that generally hold us back from getting rid of staff when we need to are in our favor at the moment. We are able to get rid of staff, and we are able to make sure we work with the leanest possible team to get our business to survive. So if you haven't yet, review, understand who's needed, and work with as small a team as possible to make sure you can cover at least, or you can work towards at least a break even, because that will be your biggest cost. If you have salaried employees, you are forced to pay them, and you'll be forced to pay them at the end of the month. And if you can't make that as potent and as beneficial to you as possible, the chances are you will not get through this. One nice way of doing that, and it's something we've been working with a few of our clients as well, is can you put a target to what your productivity per employee should be? So as an example, if I'm keeping a salesperson online or keeping a salesperson within my business ranks, what is their target? So as an example, if I know I need to make, I'm paying that person 10,000 a month, I could put a target down of 5 times or 10 times, whatever your price may be, put a target down of what that person should achieve. And if they don't achieve that, the question should be asked is, are they really that valuable? Same thing for production. If you know that you want to make a target of 400,000 Rand for the month, and you've got 5 teams or 5 people producing your products and services, are they able to produce 40,000 or 50,000 Rand per person, even if that's not what they're being paid? Because that's what they need to do to be able to keep the business alive and afloat. And if you can't put those figures down, reach out to people who are able to do that and help you see that, because it's one way of keeping good track and measurement of what's going on in your company. Review and cut unnecessary costs, I think, goes without saying. And then lastly, I think contact your banks. So this is probably a little bit obvious right now. And if you haven't done it yet, definitely do it. Contact your banks to see if you are able to get either more loans or to get payment holidays on things you are indebted with them already. Most of the banks tend to be quite good at this. Most of the banks are giving us a bit of an allowance or giving us loans. Have a look and see what you can do. There is a very firm belief that you should ask for a loan when you don't need it, because that's when you get it the easiest. As soon as you ask for a loan when you need it, the chances are you will struggle to get that loan because you can't prove you can repay it. And then just the last few things, guys. The biggest thing about any turnaround strategy or any reviving strategies, you have to implement your strategies with speed. You can't linger and wait and listen to people's advisors too often. You have to go ahead and just do it sometimes. Take that first step and start adjusting your steps if you need to. Implement your strategy with intent. So make sure you buy into it from the start. And at least with that goal is there, you can start planning your journey a little bit differently if you need to as well. So as long as you know what the end destination looks like, the way you get there can always be altered. But as long as you start going, you should be able to get on the right path. Be transparent. Don't be scared to share what your vision is. Don't be scared to share your objectives, particularly with your key stakeholders. That being your bank, being your employees, being your suppliers, being your partners in your business. Be transparent so you all can be on the same page and aligned to what you want to achieve, and then create an environment of cooperation. So talk, share, be transparent, and make sure that you can work together, because you're going to need to rely on, firstly, your customers to be willing to buy from you, your suppliers to be willing to supply you, and your employees willing to take the tough choices they need to make as well. So things like pay cuts, things like short time, all those sort of things are things where we need to rely on other people to work with us on our companies and to work with us on our strategies. All right, that's it for today, guys. We've got about 5 minutes left. Anyone have any questions or comments about cash flow they want to share with us? Anyone have any stories or success stories they've achieved already they want to share? Nobody? Any of my panelists want to add into that? Henk or Barbara?
Hi, Damion, it's Barbara here.
Okay, sorry, Bob's got.
No, Karen, you go. Karen?
No, I'm here. Sorry, I was battling with my mute, my mute button. I just wanted to share. I've been working quite closely with the tourism business, and by applying what Damion has been talking about today, there's been a real positive turn in events from the shareholders' perspective, because they can see, I mean, I'm working with the management team, and they can see that the management team is thinking out of the box and trying to steer the way forward quite well in a planned manner. And yeah, this week there's been some positive results because of that. So I just wanted to share it. It does work.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, from my side, Damion, I think we've seen 1 or 2 of our customers that have actually re-looked at their projections going forward and work quite well in terms of changing the way they look at their business. And I know the big thing that you keep talking about is cutting staff. That was one thing they had to focus quite a lot on. And they've managed to reduce their staff by about 15 staff members, which is quite a big thing for them. But I think it's just that projection, that when you do your projection looking at the 12 months ahead, what is important there is to really look at those figures and do the number crunching to say, what am I earning? What am I going to get in? And try and be as realistic as possible. And then changing your expenses against that earning. And in this instance, like you said as well, is going to the banks and actually asking them for help, or alternatively, trying to get your debit orders, maybe it's rental agreements or retirement annuities or any form of costs that you have that you can look at getting to suppliers and saying, can you put me on hold? And once you put those figures into your actual projections, it definitely helps you to sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. So my recommendation would really be just to talk to your suppliers, talk to the banks, and make sure you get relief where you need it right now, because it's definitely not going to be a turnaround in a month. It'll take another good three to 6 months to get through this.
Awesome. All right, guys, if no one has any questions or comments, we're going to end off the webinar then. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it was a little bit insightful. Again, I know that this is not something that's going to be done easily, but again, taking that first step, asking questions, reaching out for more information, those are the things we need to now do as business owners to make sure we can get through this tough time. I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll chat soon. Thank you.